I was at a dinner party recently and chatting with a young student at the University of Chicago who told me he was studying classics. I had to quickly remember what I learned in high school English class about the Iliad and the Odyssey. And luckily, I was able to remember those titles. And he said, yes, of course, they study that and many other works, but he quickly moved on to the topic of the fact that all these works, of course, are best understood and interpreted in the original Greek or in Latin translations. And then I somewhat shriveled in the idea that, oh, honestly, it had never even occurred to me that these works would have been, of course, in Greek and not in English as I read them in high school English class. He went on to explain that on top of that, most of these works were intended to be poems or even sung as songs, and often in Greek times they were sung as a song. I shared what little I knew about the topic from an article I read years ago that in Shakespeare's time, everyone was pretty well versed in the Greek classics and referenced them on a regular basis. And in our time, we reference Shakespeare's works as our relative classics in our time. I thought that was kind of fascinating, the idea that a lot of it is lost to us. The idea that it's in Greek or that somehow Shakespeare isn't the classics. It all seems to me that it's all pretty much Greek to me. Welcome to Illinois Bridging Awareness. I'm Stanley Smith. In the Shakespeare works, the many, many quotes and speeches and discourses often peppered with references to the Bible and to Shakespeare, oftentimes unknowingly. One that comes to my mind recently is the one about discretion. Is the which better part of valor? And I think most of us hear that and to mean that discretion is what we should offer up, and it's a demonstration of valor to be discreet and hold our cards close to our chest. But it's the which better part of valor that's the telling part of that phrase. The which better part is that you're doing just that. You're hiding out. You're not really embracing or partaking in the valor part. You're hiding out in the discretion part. At Illinois Bridging Awareness, I don't think we're trying to hide out in the discretion part. We've all taken plenty of chances and risks here in the whole flow of ideas. I heard recently the concept that we're all a product of the flow of ideas, and we're discerning and picking out where we are in this steady flow of ideas, and it's always changing and evolving, and we need to follow our own star and pick out the ideas and cultivate the ideas on a regular basis that are best describing and defining who we are as a person. And we should listen to that and not to other people's ideas of who we are. At Illinois Bridging Awareness, we're discussing ideas and we're coming together on ideas and we're sharing ideas. And this led us to being in a particularly terrific spot to be open to embrace this General Assembly concept here in Illinois, which came to us kind of out of the ether, out of a connect the dots and picking up the threads of some missteps and some false starts and some restarting and reinitiating this topic. So we've discussed before that we don't fully understand it, but that's okay. It's part of the flow of ideas, but the basic premise was explained to us last Saturday at a meeting we had here in Illinois about it. And I know there was considerable interest and concern that we didn't have infiltrators or people disrupting the meeting. And it was remarkable because it was a very cohesive uh, gathering of different groups. It wasn't just our group, it was our group and a number of other people from other organizations coming together to embrace this topic. The basic premise was the idea that we were founded as a republic here in this country, and somehow we've lost the thread of the republic. And if you can't hold a republic, you're going to end up with a democracy. And the only option you have when you're in a democracy is to come together and form a republic. So, simple way of describing it or explaining it would probably be just that we're trying to come together. We have to come together. Democracy just implies and operates through division and wedged issues. There's going to be a majority or a mob rule, and then there's going to be a minority who's always subjugated to the majority, and that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable as free and godly people. Um, I was mindful during our gathering that as much as we're appreciative of connecting consciousness for initially bringing us together as a group, we probably wouldn't have been able to do this as connecting consciousness members or through connecting consciousness members, and that's fine if you're continuing on that route. But it becomes more and more obvious to me and to others that the route that we're on, um, we're really where we needed to be for this very reason, because we can't come together when we're signed on to a clique or a special interest group. We need to come together as the people. And that was one thing I picked up in the meeting, was that special interest groups are identified as entities by the corrupt system, but the rest of us, oddly enough, as the people, we somehow fell through the cracks of being identified as an identity. They don't really see us. We're kind of invisible. Um, I was reminded recently of the Occupy Wall Street movement a number of years ago, and that at the time, and even until very recently, I thought, well, those people were just a bunch of nuts, a bunch of kooks. They were gathering together after the financial collapse to protest the intrusion of big government and big business into destroying our lives. And I think most of us were more focused on just getting through the crisis, getting business up and running, and supporting the system because we thought that was where we needed to be. And those people were just a bunch of kooks and troublemakers. But now looking back, you can see, well, wow, that they really were onto it. They were onto it ahead of us. And they basically came together as an assembly, and they filed their petitions and their grievances, and they were heard. They were heard. And it was in the news and it was reported and they were recognized. We also can look, as much as it might be hard to wrap your head around it, the idea of the Black Lives Matter people. They're a recognized entity and they have grievances and complaints and issues, and they are heard. They're seen by the corrupt government system as an entity, as well as Antifa and other groups. So the concept of being an entity and being an entity together as the people, if we can all come together. Last week, I was asking what is important? What's important in all this? Is it just these particular storylines or these facts or these issues, individual ideas? Is that what's important, or is it the coming together? I think more and more we see it's really the coming together. We need to look at what's bringing us together, what makes us hang together. We don't need to agree on everything, but if it's going to keep dividing us or causing dispersions or ill will, that's probably working against us. So I'm not saying this is easy, but we need to all step aside from some of our personal likes and dislikes. We don't have to all get along or agree or go along or do everything that people want. Um, but that was really instrumental in our journey to the General Assembly. We would not have had a General Assembly here in Illinois if some of us who've gotten burned weren't able to rise above that. We don't need to be okay with it. No one should get burned, but it's going to happen. If you're finding your voice, I was so intrigued by one of our participants on Saturday, Linda, who shared that she really has recently found her voice, and I think that's very important. I can tell you that I'm a behind the scenes person. I'm not a spokesperson. I'm somebody who's lived in Chicago most of my adult life, and I never said anything about anything because you go along to get along. You don't say anything, but as you do find a voice and you do speak up and take a stand, I can tell you from years and years of volunteer experience that it's if you're in someone else's way, you're gonna get roughed up just a little. And I don't think any of us are actively trying to be a monkey wrench in anyone's plan or scheme, but we have to find our voice and balance it with the voice of others. During this time of Advent, I I sense the idea that something is imminent. Change is imminent. something happening in the world is imminent. Something coming into our world is imminent. And I think our gathering at the General Assembly was an example of that. It was startling. But beyond that, I think we're all waiting, we're all yearning for something major to happen in the world. And part of that is being awake. We're onto it. We're aware of it. We're also aware of people who are not getting it. And we sometimes think of them as the infiltrators, but I don't know if we need to be that worried about infiltrators because I don't really know if they get it. Everything that we're onto is Greek to them. You know, who showed up at the nativity scene? It was the wise men and the shepherds, but where was everybody else? Everybody else basically had no idea what was going on. Discretion might be the best which better part of valor, but the valor is finding our voice and coming together. And that's what's important. And finding our voice will bring what is imminent. If you'd like to join us at Illinois Bridging Awareness, I'll include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation to our Saturday Statewide Illinois call, which is every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time on Zoom. And I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.